Hello, very good morning to you. 4 minutes past 9, in fact, this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to the 9 till noon show. Greg Hughes here with you till noon. And thank you very much to Donald Kavanagh, who sat in for me yesterday. It is Friday, which means it's our Friday panel. And we have in studio with us Mary Hart and Professor Kevin Curran. And we're going to be discussing and reflecting on the big stories of the week and of the day. Both of you, though, in the first instance, thank you so much for coming in.
Good morning.
It's very nice to speak to you. Now, one of the topics that dominated our conversation this week and also nationally was the issue of homelessness. Not only the fact that there is homelessness, but the level of homelessness, who's to blame for homelessness. Mary, I'll start with you, perhaps your reflection on, I suppose, the narrative that sort of wound itself through the week and the controversy there.
Yeah, exactly. I know the comments were prompted, by the insinuation that the do-gooders or the Good Samaritans should stay off the streets and stop creating scenes where, handing out coffee, and that it actually should be, and people should be off the streets basically for the tourists. Those are the headline grabbers about homelessness. It's certainly an issue that most of us are unaware of how serious it is until recently, when we heard of the number of children that are living in hotels in one rooms. That is homelessness. The attitude in general would be, well, how could you possibly end up being homeless? It must be that, you didn't bother going out to work.
Bad behaviour, exactly. Some officials pointed to.
You had a drinking problem or a drug problem. There is that. But there is a vast, vast number of people in this country that we are only now waking up to being aware of. They're homeless for a lot of different issues. The categorisation of the word homeless, what does that mean? It means that you cannot afford to pay rent in, let's say, the worst of all places is Dublin, where, I have my own, my own children who have had to pay rent in Dublin, astronomical for students, and then young people starting out in their first jobs cannot afford the rents. So there's an issue with building houses in the capital, but it's not just the capital, it's all over. And it is all over, and it is in Letterkenny too. It shouldn't be happening. We're just not building enough houses.
And it's in Letterkenny, it's right across the county and across the region. Two things that kind of jumped out at me, I don't know if you agree, is that firstly, it's as if there is a notion to try and turn people against the homeless for some reason. And there are also some people feel, coming from government, when you have 3 or 4 people from government saying the same type of thing, that it could be policy, that there is a sort of trying to play down the issue of homelessness, that it's not really as big a deal as everyone's making out to be. What's your views on it, Kevin?
Yeah, well, Kieran Maguire, who's the manager of the only hostel actually in Letterkenny, has invited Leo Varadkar to come here, because he believes that Leo quoted old figures, really saying that we got the lowest figures for homelessness, but there's about 8,000 families and about 3,500 kids are included in that number who are homeless. And what he has seen is obviously a huge increase in the amount of people looking to stay, and they've only got 10 rooms really. Before, people would have been generally always with alcohol and drug problems, but now he's seen families and he's seen people who lost their jobs. And he's just saying that there's a dire need for this around here. And of course, it's been covered in a lot of the local papers in the last few days. And again, the point in the 400 vacant homes here. And again, the bank owns some of them. So it would be worth looking into that, because in some ways, again, people who deal in this sector of homelessness have said that emergency shelters are not the answer. They're like a band-aid, really, that what we need is accommodation, which is being able to foster these people, bring them back into work projects, provide them with what they need, and just bring them back into community as such. But
yeah, we were chatting to Kieran last Monday, and what he pointed out is, look, we've got 10 units of accommodation. They're designed really to house people for 3 to 6 months. You help them get back on their feet, maybe give them some advice into moving on and all that type of stuff. But he can't get them, or that group can't get them into any of these 400 odd vacant homes in Letterkenny, because people say they're not available. Some people don't like the HAP scheme, even though you're obliged to accept. So there's something going on, something not being enforced. There's a impasse there.
Yeah, I mean, there was an agreement signed in Dublin with Father Peter McVerry and the New York, whose name escapes me, organisation that they not only, they don't see the issue being solved of bringing people into hostels. They see the issue as being solved as the whole person, the holistic, that they get the person into a working environment or an educational environment, as well as just finding you a space to put a roof over your head temporarily. That doesn't solve anything at all. Certainly, what Kevin is saying, there is a housing stock there in Donegal. You see it everywhere. I see it where I live in Rafo. There's a hotel's been lying empty for years. Is there no way that that places like that can be turned into accommodation for families where they can start off? Years ago in rural Ireland, you had what was called an SI scheme, cottage. So people were given the money and you got a loan from the council and you paid it back. What has happened to that?
Yeah, well, we'll come back to that if you put your headphones on, because not everything really, even if you have a roof over your head, sometimes it's completely unacceptable. Denise Gibson, thank you for taking the call this morning.
No bother.
Right, your home in Manor Cunningham, is it a council-owned property or you own it yourself, Denise?
No, it's a council-owned property.
And you've made representations and complaints because it's infested?
Yeah, it's down clear at the minute, though.
And it's it's a rat problem we're talking about here, is it?
No, I have a person out the minute and they says that I have rats and mice now, all together.
And how long's this been ongoing?
So it's 4 years. We're fighting now to get moved.
And what kind of impact has this infestation had on yourselves and the property?
My children, the rats, got into their room last week, and my 2 girls were out sleeping in the room. And my girl, they haven't slept. They haven't slept properly. They're scared,
And what are you being told as to why the problem's persistent for so long? You tell me, you've told us that there's traps that have been put down and what have you, but I suppose they've worked out how to get round those things, the rats and the mice, obviously, or they still wouldn't be there.
Oh, with the attic's full of traps, out the back, everywhere. They have everything set, but nothing. They just keep coming back and coming back.
And what is attracting them to, is there... I don't know, what's around your property that might be sort of making it a focus for rats?
There's a wooded area, beside, just right beside me, and they cleared away a bit of it, but now that's just as bad as ever again, and the rats are just getting worse and worse.
And they're eating through things in the home?
They got into my bathroom last week, and they ate through the back of the sink, and that's how they got into my daughter's room.
And you're saying it's affecting your daughter's sleep now?
Oh, she's screaming. At the end of it's that bad. I'm taking videos to prove how bad it's actually gotten. Of my daughter's up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Of them screaming because they don't want to be in the house because they're terrified.
And have the council ever sent someone out an exterminator, or I don't know what the exact terminology is, but someone that will come out and eradicate them as opposed to?
They've been here 10 times.
What do you see as the solution to this, Denise?
My daughters don't want to be there. We're not actually in the house at the minute because we're feared. I'm feared for my daughters, nothing else.
Well, where are you staying now?
We're staying in the hotel. Someone put us up in the hotel until Sunday.
Which is not in any way ideal for children and long-term accommodation.
They don't want to go back near the house.
So what are you going to do?
We're just going to have to stay with our family to see if we get something else. We tried to go for rented accommodation, but rented accommodation is far too dear for us.
And what is it because of I presume there'd be a HAP payment involved there, is there?
No, everywhere we've been trying to get, they're not doing that. Do you know what I mean?
They say they don't. What do they say to you? They say we're not accepting it, or?
Yeah, they don't want to accept that kind of payment.
And how does that make you feel as someone looking out for the best for your children?
We just want moved. We just need out. I didn't want to do what we done yesterday by putting the videos up, but we have no other option. At
the end of your tether, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I suppose with the girls at school, the school-going age and what have you, I mean, it's not, you can't do it from a hotel. You know, you need to be able to do uniforms and homework and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like my girls are off today. They're attending the doctor because like, I'm feared for them. Do you know what I mean?
What are they going to the doctor with, Denise?
Just to see like if they can help me with anything.
Mm.
Do you know, like they're not sleeping, they're hardly eating, they're not doing anything for me, like.
So it's like as if stress is affecting them, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, and what have the council told you then about perhaps alternative accommodation? Are they saying there's none available? Have they made any offers? What's the...
No, haven't heard nothing.
But you can't go back into that house in Manor Cunningham, that's the fact.
No, definitely not, love.
Right, okay. Denise, thanks. I hope you get sorted soon.
Thank you.
All right, okay. We'll follow up to see how you get on a little later on today. Mary, it's a sad situation. I don't know if you saw the videos, but rats running around the home, and the children too scared to stay in there. It's clearly impacting on their health and the knock-on effect on their education.
I suppose it's a specific issue.
Instant, yeah. But it puts a face to the problem, though.
It does, but it's not. But it's not specifically, dealing with homelessness as an issue. It certainly is an issue that the council need to look at. That it's clearly that there is an issue with that home, and it either needs to be closed up and another one found. What's the easiest solution for that particular issue? I couldn't say because I don't know enough about it.
Well, what I would say there, I can understand why landlords are reluctant to take maybe housing association payments. Because, because they see it maybe as someone who is not in a proper job, maybe just for whatever reason.
But if you're getting paid the rent, why is that a blocker, Kevin?
See, that's exactly why. What I would recommend, because there's nothing to say that someone who's on HAP is any less reliable than someone who's in a job. So what I would recommend to people who are finding that is, what landlords want is obviously to put a big investment into a property. It's cost them a lot of money, and they know, and we've seen the horror stories, and many of them will have them. So if you can go to a landlord and show them your last references from the last people that you rented from, also go further and give them references to family members, to people who were responsible in the community, even offering whatever you can, even down payments, and say, come in and check. If you can reassure a landlord, they're there to be bargained with, really. Work at that. Don't let that go, because really a reference can count for an awful lot with any landlord.
But when demand outstrips supply,
yes.
But
a landlord will still go for someone who, if they feel that this person's maybe not the ideal client, they're looking for a doctor, they're looking for someone who, but what they care about as much is someone who's there for a long time, that's not just there for a few months and having to go through that rotation, trying to get someone else in and advertise it again. If you can convince a landlord that, first of all, you are reliable, and that you're there for a long period. I mean, as you exactly said, the money is money. That they're just trying to pay off.
It'd be like shops, don't want people coming in buying stuff with social welfare payments. I mean, no one would tolerate that, because the shops wouldn't do it, because they'd be losing out on money. So why is it okay to discriminate? Why is it okay to discriminate in giving someone a home? I mean, how can you go and get a job if you can't say this is where I live?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the issue. That's always been the issue, and it's the issue like right across, Ireland, Britain, and France, wherever. If you can't put an address down, then you just can't apply for a job. I mean, it all goes right back to a failure to build social housing, a failure to properly address the issue. Small units, small housing estates on the fringes of towns where there are schools, where there are services, has worked in the past. It's a model. It's not been applied anymore. We have to just look at our own local authorities. They don't have the money to build the housing stock. So it's really central government is going to have to start looking and revisiting the amount of money that's available to local authorities. I mean, in Northern Ireland it's completely different. The housing executive looks after that housing stock. We don't have that issue anymore. We don't have such an organisation wholly responsible in Ireland for just looking after the social housing stock. It's each council area that's doing it, and they're strapped for money. They don't have it.
It's the elephant in the room that no one is actually telling us what the policy is, because we've gone from building hundreds of houses in Donegal alone a short while ago, 5-6 years ago, to building 2 a couple of years ago. So, I mean, unless central government completely switch the tap off, why is no one telling us this so we can understand the problem? Is there a policy of not building homes? If that is the case, what is the plan? Because everyone's identifying the problems, but no one who seems to have, is an official in this area is actually telling us what the plan is, how we're going to fix it. Is that us?
Well, I don't know the answer as to why they're not building enough houses, other than saying that there isn't any money. That's what we were told constantly. Where does a local authority find its money? It finds its money from government. They don't have housing rates here, so they have commercial housing rates, but we don't have. So, we do have a local property tax, but that's just not enough. Why are there not the number of houses being built? Because there isn't any profit in developers building houses anymore, as there was in the past.
We're paying the 64 families in bed and breakfast hotel accommodation.
Absolutely,
we're paying 20 to 30,000 euro per room for those people. So there is money there. That's my point.
But it's not from that pot.
Okay.
It's typical of the joined up thinking that doesn't happen.
Well, lack thereof,
it doesn't happen. So they. If you were to turn around and say, well, this is on the table at cabinet level, for instance, this is the millions that we are spending on hotel accommodation, rental accommodation. If we push that money into the housing stock into each county and say you're responsible now for building X number of homes and renting them out at a nominal rate, as I said, like in years gone by, you got a council loan or you got the piece of land. You had the piece of land and then the council built the house on it and you paid them back at a very low rate, which is exactly what should be happening, but it's just not happening. They're not building the houses.
Because even down in Limerick, they got a 500 million euro loan to build office space, but to create 3,000 jobs, but none of that seems to be allocated for housing, so we're not learning even when we have these things flagged before us. A caller says the landlords will rent the house, but there's no guarantee that the tenant will pass over the HAP payment. This should be paid directly to the landlord via an agent. If it's not, perhaps that's... A caller wants to know, are councils holding onto houses for refugees? House the Irish first. What's your view on that attitude, Kevin? And it has come across during the course of the week, whilst we've been discussing this, that, we should be looking after our own. And there was 3 Romanian gentlemen were homeless on the streets of Letterkenny last weekend, and quite a bit of the conversation was send them home. We can't look after our own. What are they doing here?
That's a difficult one, but we're part of the European Union, or at least the South is. Again, and you got free movement of, so what happens if an Irish person's abroad? Look at all the Irish who were homeless for decades in the streets of London. We love your neighbour as yourself. We're not supposed to really distinguish between someone's nationality. That, if someone's on our doorstep and they need food or food or water, we're supposed to provide it.
Yeah, who is our own? What right do we have to say this is our country? Just because we happen to be born here, anyone who is here has the equal rights to any facility that we have. It's issues like that don't bring anything positive to the table.
Here's another text. Kevin said that the landlords don't have to give you a house if you don't have a good job. Paraphrasing there, it's probably not exactly what you said, but they go on to say, I know a number of foreign nationals who are living in good homes for little money and they don't seem to be employed. Now, I don't know what the real connection to what we're talking about there is. If you rent your house out, you'll get about 5,000 euro per year, and then you're hit with a large tax bill. In Dublin, landlords rent out rooms, pay nothing. Is it a wonder why 400 houses are empty in Donegal? Well, that's just Letterkenny there. I hear them talking about housing. There's plenty of housing. There are options out there for people. There are plenty of social houses available, but people don't seem to be looking down the avenues of the council. But a lot of the problems we're hearing is that it's because of the homes not being allocated by the council, like homes that are lying empty for some reason or one reason or other.
The council, and when I was growing up, the council built the houses. The actual council itself built the houses, and then it sort of began to be privatised. That there were property developers were given over the right to build houses on behalf of the council. And I think that's perhaps one of the issues that maybe the councils and government need to revisit, that policy decision as to why they don't have their own housing stock that they build themselves and not pass it over to a developer, because, you know, again, you're up against commercial interests and, you know, money being spent in perhaps the wrong place.
Yeah, and a caller says, why doesn't the council buy up these houses that are lying empty? But they can't, because the legislation doesn't allow for that, because then they are interfering in the housing market and skewing it. So they have to wait till the house is lying empty for a very long period of time. But if it's lying empty for a long period of time, why is no one buying it? And
I mean, I think also we shouldn't lose sight of, you know, the landlords, particularly the man in Dublin who, you know, no matter how many times that the RT documentary, when they contacted Dublin Council, and they just never responded, and no amount of excuses will say you know why they didn't respond. Oh, they didn't read the email. That is not to me a good enough excuse. But that landlord was getting what was it, 250,000 a month, with everybody squished into a house. That should not happen.
One thing I don't think was covered in that programme, and it did a good job, but at the same time, a lot of the accommodation was closed down, and all of those people that were staying there, albeit in perhaps not nice conditions, what happened to them? They were put out.
Well, I'm assuming that they were found alternative.
By whom? I don't know. What.
Well, the local council, Dublin City Council, or Dublin Corporation. Right.
We'll be back with more after this break.
Letterkenny Shopping Centre, the centre of shopping in Donegal. Free parking and shopping all under one roof. Letterkenny Shopping Centre, bringing you the time at
27 minutes past 9. Sarah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Right, what's your view on the housing crisis, the homelessness issue?
Well, my opinion is that there should be a general housing list. There are lots of people. Most of the people who are homeless and who have lost their homes are in Dublin and areas where they can't get homes. And then there are thousands of homes, as you know, throughout the country, unoccupied. A lot of them belonging to the council. But lots of the people would move to the country, but they can't. And the reason they can't is they have to be on a county council list. Now, you can't be on two county council lists. If you're on a county council list in Dublin and you say you want to move to Letterkenny, you cannot just apply and get a house in Letterkenny, a council house. You have to come to Letterkenny, rent a house there, and those people don't have the money to do that, because it takes a lot of money to, uproot and go to someplace else. But you have to already be living there and on the council list.
So, Sarah, we should have a national housing list, and you can maybe tick a number of county boxes if you're interested, and try and match people better that way, rather than corralling them in each county.
Absolutely, and that's a very simple thing. A lot of those people would move to the country, and they had a pilot scheme somewhere, instead of, and a lot of people moved down to, I don't know where, Clare or somewhere, and they said, oh God, this is great, we've all moved down here and we've got houses. That should be normal, that you could get a house anywhere that you wanted to go, or that you maybe got a job, or even if you hadn't a job. A lot of the people haven't got jobs, so it doesn't really matter to them where they live, and a lot of the people that are homeless have jobs that they can work from home, because a lot of these people who have lost their houses are people who are in good jobs but still haven't got enough money to recover their houses. And if you had exactly what you said there, general county list, if you get sick in Cork and you're from Donegal, you can go into a doctor and he puts in your name and your date of birth on a computer. He sees that, you're with Dr. So-and-so up in Donegal, and you can get treated. No problem.
Sarah, thank you very much for that. What do you think, guys? It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, moving to, a lot of things are going to be cheaper, but of course it just doesn't always suit people because, you maybe your rival point in Ireland is in Dublin, and you've also come in because you've got cousins there or whatever.
Or your family's there. People want to live close to their family or their children in local schools. But it'd be worth looking at, because even if it relieved 5% of the issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would agree totally with what Sarah says about that, a housing list that you can, because there are obviously pockets of places across Ireland. We have a very small population on this island, and there's lots of space, but there's also lots of empty properties all over the place, and it will alleviate the issues that are in Dublin.
We have 5 constituencies here in this county. I wonder how much movement there is even within the county. You know, I know, like, say, you know, Donegal electoral area.
You mean the council areas?
Yeah, I wonder how much the movement there is in the housing list, even within one county.
Well, it used to be the case in local authorities, like that you could only be given a house if you were from, for instance, Ruffo, where I'm from. The houses that were allocated would have to go to local families, and sometime in the late 1970s, early 80s, a court case was taken on behalf of a family who were from Gweedore, and that they were, you were never getting to the top of the housing list. So let's say, for instance, that the person who was at the very top of the housing list wasn't in Ruffo, they were over in Gweedore. They could never get a house in Ruffo, so you could only get a house in Gweedore. So they changed all of that. So whoever was top of the housing list picked or were put into any part of Donegal. You know, there's a positive and a negative to that, that the local people in the area felt that people were better in their own area with their own community, and their, you know, so the houses should be really built in where everybody has this equal access, not dragging people from one side of the county to the other just because that's where the house is, you know. So it should really be the choice of the person, not the choice of the local authority to where they put you.
Right, that's that issue. And keep your calls and comments coming on that 086 60 25,000 or 074 91 25,000. It's going to be interesting to see, with it staying on the agenda, how things will progress going forward. Right, another big issue of the week was infrastructure. I suppose there's two aspects to it. There's access to the northwest, but there's also commuting and moving around once within it. A lot of the focus often in Letterkenny because, say, for instance, they're starting work on the 4-lane road there, which is the gateway to the north and west of the county. So it's quite a significant piece of infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, I've been, reading in this morning's paper, it's the Donegal News, where more road chaos feared in Letterkenny. I mean, as all of us who use the routeway into Letterkenny, the one road that leads into Letterkenny, and as you say, that then to the rest of, if you're coming in that direction, from Letterkenny onwards to the north of the county. I mean, there is chaos anyway around Letterkenny. This is not going to be helped by the ongoing roadworks that they say are going to take about 17 months, and it will be log jammed. And part of that is Irish Water, who they're everywhere digging up roads around the county and everywhere else in the country, I'm imagining. So it's the N14 development that coming into Letterkenny is going to be a serious issue. Infrastructure's always been an issue. We live surrounded by water and a border, so we have been isolated, and I dread to think how much more isolated we're going to be, because I was amused at a comment in the papers this morning about we will not, it was a government official saying, we will not ignore Northern Ireland in the Brexit issue. What about Donegal? We are actually the most isolated place potentially in all of those Brexit negotiations now. So, like an Irish government official in Dublin saying, we won't abandon Northern Ireland. Don't forget, don't abandon Donegal either.
We only have about a 1 kilometre link to the rest of the country.
Yeah, exactly. And so our roads, and do I have to repeat it? The road from Letterkenny, for instance, to Dublin. It's whatever happened to the whatever it was called, the spinal road from Derry,
the
Letterkenny. Yeah, well, whatever they call it never happened. It's still not there, Yeah, okay. It's the A5 or it's A something else in Northern Ireland. So it really has to be dealt with. Okay. And, that's, but certainly in Letterkenny there is an issue, and, will it be resolved? Probably not.
Professor Kevin Curran, also a guest this morning. Your views, I suppose you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, but I suppose it's what kind of omelette you make in the end, really.
Yeah, as some local businesses have voiced to the Letterkenny Chamber of Commerce, maybe a threat to withhold rates. Yeah. Again, it is a pity that you often wonder, why does a road have to be dug up? Why can't it be the verge? Why can't all the, there's a long acre there. There's a lot of grass. There's even other businesses. Some you just wonder, but Also, about the coordination between schemes as well. You know, like some cities have made major savings by making sure, looking into the future, that the broadband and the telecom and the water and the utilities all work together. And once it's dug up and there's a gap in the road, you lay your pipes. You know, that. And also New York as well have moved to kind of a pay per hour, charging £2,500 per hour to firms who have been given contracts, which I do like that. I like the fact that a firm, whoever won this tender, will have come along and saying how long it will take. It'll probably be a fixed price, but why not let them go for the tender, be given it, but they have to quote their hours, and maybe that there is a fine there, and it's up to them as they adhere to that, because and again, you would love to see night times as well, you know, nighttime working. That's the thing,
as well. and when you raise that, it's like, well, there's complications with that. And I just wonder, why does it seem as if it's almost uniquely here that would be a complication? Whereas, as you say, in New York, you say, right, you've got this, it's multi-million euro contract, but you have to tell us best way you're going to do it, or
you got to face. You go to London any night, and you walk the street there from any, you know, and you'll see the tons of workers going into the tube. You know, and it's just a part of life that you have the night shift workers who
are absolutely, I agree. I mean, and likewise, you know, you go into New York and then you see them working on the motorways out of New York, but it's at night time that they're doing it. They're all there working away when the traffic is not as heavy, and certainly I cannot see any great reason why Irish Water can't have their work at night.
Why not? Like, say there's an hour in the morning where people are going to school and people are going to work, and then there's an hour kind of in the evening. I mean, even if you relieved it as much as you can but we saw works not far from here in Letterkenny that it was only in one very specific area, the new Business Park Road there, I think it's called, and everywhere in Letterkenny was affected by it.
Yeah, everywhere.
Now, where's the traffic management? Where's the plan? You know, I mean, I can see problems with what they're doing in the 4 lanes in terms of traffic going to be there's traffic going to end up halfway up Lurgy Brack, halfway out of the road. The roundabout it needs lights, or else it won't be able to work. Like, there just doesn't seem to be any or enough forward planning or joined up thinking. Because one other thing, the road in Ballabafay has been dug up at this point 3-4 times in the last couple of years, because perhaps maybe different utilities aren't. You know, there's a hole in the road, let's get our pipe in there too.
Yeah, I mean, you hope, I mean, you know, you presume that there is some plan at over level that they discuss these strategies, but it would be nice if it was a bit more transparent and we could see that actually, yeah, they have thought about this, that it was only absolutely necessary when they can't combine, you know, future works, that they actually have to go separately. But
I think there is nighttime works planned for that road, in fairness, from a previous interview I did, but it's just historically we don't see it as much as perhaps.
And also we have the issue of the National Roads Authority only govern a certain number of roads in Donegal. Most of our roads are actually local, our routes, and you know, they're financially, you know, funded by somebody else or looked after by somebody else, you know, so we need more national routes to be identified in Donegal. You know, because we're a county again, isolated, because we're not passing into another county. So, like, the rest of Ireland has pretty much a motorway going pretty close to it right across the country, you know, from Dublin to Galway or Cork. So Kerry will benefit from that, and Clare will benefit from that, Sligo benefits. But we don't benefit from any motorway going through us, and we don't have any rail system. So for that reason alone, we should be getting certainly more than our fair share.
I was down at a meeting in Dublin yesterday of news people, and every time that what he's always moaning about up there, all he's ever do up there is moan.
Absolutely,
You've got that, Mary, I'm sure.
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Are we moaning correctly, Professor? Or I mean, we've plenty to moan about. I mean, but that's the view from down the country. Now, it's said tongue in cheek, but they think everything's fine up here, but we're actually just moaners.
Yeah, it is sad, because I often look at the country and the rail network, that the west of Ireland, there is zero there. That, you know, I really I'm grateful for the motorway now from Tuam to Limerick. I can get to Limerick quicker than I can to Uachtar and Galway, which is a fantastic piece of road. You know, it really is. But it's just that train is no option to Limerick. I can make it from Derry to Limerick in 4 hours 15 minutes, and I'm obviously not trying to break the land speed record. But a train would take me 10 hours. It's not even, you would just get a bus if you feed O'Donnell down all the way and then get another bus. But it's just such a pity that we just have this complete wilderness as in a railway on the west coast. But of course, the roads have improved down south over the years. We always had this thing, that in the north they were like it was, Wonderland Avenue in the south. But they have really improved, I must admit. But
if you're travelling to Dublin from here, say Dublin, for example, from Bundoran to Sligo is a death trap. Bit okay through Sligo, but then from much of Sligo to Carrick and Shannon, a death trap. And then there's another massive section between that and you start getting to another place and it improves a little bit. So even from here to the capital, much of the road, even beyond Sligo and what have you.
Would you go terrible. That way though? That's not the way I would go.
I live in South.
Yeah, that's
South
different.
Donegal,
Yeah, but the north end of the county, which includes Derry, that spinal route that has never been developed. I mean, when I was going to university in Dublin, the best travelling part from Donegal to Dublin was through Northern Ireland. Now it is absolutely the worst. It's a nightmare. It's nearly as quick for me to go from Donegal, from East Donegal to Belfast to Dublin, that route, because it's just a nightmare. You go to Ballygawley and you're on a
I don't know. I mean, really, as I'm surprised.
I can get to Dublin. I mean, we're not a million miles from Dublin, so 2.5 hours to the airport from East Donegal now, is doable, not without breaking any speed limits, but you are held up continually going through Northern Ireland, which again, we're back to the point of the isolation aspect of it, because nobody will agree to put that road in between Derry-Donegal, Letterkenny to Dublin. There's a great road from Letterkenny to Ballyshannon and onwards to Sligo, but there isn't on the sort of the Letterkenny Derry route towards the south, towards the capital.
Now, another big thing, I'll start with you on this one, Kevin. Another big thing happened this week was we lost out in the World Cup. And when you talk about these issues, like the issues of homelessness, infrastructure, and that type of thing, as a lot of people find it crude then to be talking about trying to attract massive sporting events and the money we spend on that, and we should be spending it elsewhere. How does that sit with you in that, I suppose we still have to try and focus in other areas as well, don't we?
Yeah, well, I presume you meant the Rugby World Cup.
What did I say?
No, the fact that we also lost in the Soccer World Cup.
Oh, well, we'll get to that. I didn't want to go straight to the veggies.
But no, I mean, yes, it cost $3 million apparently, the money that went into this bid, but it was also a cross-border bid. Some of it was paid for by Her Majesty. But again, no, I mean, we could have won it, and of course, you estimates that it's £1 billion into the French economy now because of that, and so it wasn't a waste. And you sometimes you just gotta, I won't even say gamble here, but sometimes you got to speculate. And we came close. I mean, we were third. The report killed us. That, in other words, the Rugby World Cup, I guess, selection committee convened a report, and of course that was done by many countries had people on the committee, but we didn't fare very well, and some of where we failed the most was in the stadiums. They mentioned at Porky Queeve that the grass was, or no, actually. Casement Park, they mentioned the grass being like knee height when the events, and also apparently in the report they got it wrong. The Porky Queeve wasn't finished when actually it is. So again, the Irish Rugby Committee brought that up. Yeah,
but then there were things on security where South Africa did very well and we did poor. Yet anyone knows that there's security issues in South Africa. And then down to the voting where you have the likes of our neighbours and alleged friends, Scotland and Wales, not voting for us. France had the World Cup in 2007. I'm not saying there's anything going on here, but where,
Well, money talks, doesn't it? That's really what's the root of this. And, just to go back to your initial question about, should we be getting all, hot and bothered about not getting the Rugby World Cup into Ireland because there are more serious issues. But it is a serious issue. And there's a lot of young kids, particularly here in Letterkenny, in fact, who play rugby. It's a great game. It's a growing game in Ireland. And we are world class in terms of our rugby team. And, I'm not going to say that I know an awful lot about rugby or indeed about sport
in general. More than I do. Anyway,
but however, I do watch rugby. I do go to games. My son plays rugby, and I see it as something that it's very disappointing. And as you say, Wales and Scotland didn't support us. New Zealand didn't support us, and seemingly Ireland's vote for New Zealand to get the World Cup in 2011, Ireland's vote was crucial in that, and we did support New Zealand. France had the money. They came up with the money. I'm told by those who know better than I that Dick Spring and Brian O'Driscoll had they've been working on this for 5 years, and they had a very good proposal together. The stadium or stadia were not an issue in the proposal. They were not told. Obviously, it was going to be that you had to have the proper stadiums available, but that we were just wrong-footed.
I
by
just
France.
would like to have them
and the International Rugby Union as well. They want the big games. They want the big players like France.
Yeah, but why didn't they look at it and go, right, okay, so the stadia are, maybe there needs a bit of work done, which happens in any situation, but right, they're not in the middle of the city, so their locations are better, for the whole fan experience, for getting there, for parking, for all that kind of stuff. I just feel that nothing was considered other than the fact that it was decided, perhaps not off the back of a report, but in meetings somewhere, and I'm not saying anything illegal happened, but that it was decided because France was behind South Africa in that. It just stinks, really. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but it just stinks to me. The whole process stinks.
Yeah, but we cannot be sure. I mean, there was outcry that, that Scotland voted for France, but then Scotland said they would see... that they believe France would generate more revenue, I guess, for the rugby they're thinking there. And Wales said that they would follow the recommendation of an independent review. But again, I think that's fair, because if you're a member of a national committee and you're making a vote, really, the neighbour things shouldn't come into it.
No, but it doesn't Eurovision.
Yeah, it shouldn't. No, but you should vote what's best for rugby, really, and you should be independent.
Developing the game, putting it out into a different area.
Well, I mean...
I don't know. Your point is a good one, but...
Well, I mean, it's the Celtic, region, so the regionalising of, Scotland would benefit from Ireland having it, I believe.
Your fans
Wales would, that there would be much more toing and froing, and of course, that's not just...
They could have been selfish there, because they could also be thinking, well, actually, Irish rugby will benefit from this by a lot, and they'll have a stronger team.
I like the way you're thinking about this.
Yeah, so therefore, we don't want them to get it. So, to be honest, that might be more of it.
Right.
Yeah, and they're not exactly, why would Scotland and Wales be friends with Ireland when it comes to rugby? Because we're their biggest, of course, France. Yeah.
All right, because anyway, we'll be back with more after this break.
Today.
Now, the Brexit issue rumbles on. We'll start with you on this one, Mary. Boris Johnson's in Dublin at the moment. He seems somewhat more diplomatic than he has in the past. Diplomacy and Boris Johnson are not words you normally throw into the same sentence. But what's your view on where we're at, where we're going? Have we moved on since the last time we talked about this, maybe a couple of months ago? I don't know.
No, probably not. But today appears to be a very crucial day on all of the fronts of negotiating, because Leo Varadkar and Theresa May are meeting this morning. Boris is in Dublin this morning. I think Boris has finally discovered that there is an island on the other side of his island, and that this island actually is very important, and it will be extremely important. But I was quite amused. He has an article in today's Irish Times, and he says, of the 52 countries that I've visited, Ireland is the most closely linked in kinship and history, and I would like to build on that special bond between us. I don't know who wrote that speech, but he has obviously been told, look, you're going to have to start playing to the Irish, because obviously Ireland is going to be the bugbear. And I love a quote that in my back days of history, that I had always held on to when I was learning about, learning history, whatever. And one of the great phrases that Gladstone had called Ireland the cloud in the west, the coming storm, the bearer of God's retribution on the Englishman, and it is coming back.
Here we come.
Yeah, here it comes. It's going to rain heavy on the UK when it comes to all of the Brexit issue. It was never foreseen by those who were voting to leave, I believe. They never looked at it. In fact, I'd say not very many even thought of the border, because those of us who have grown up around here know all about the border because we lived with it. But 1991, I think it was, when all the border checkpoints were taken away. There's a generation there that didn't even know there was such a thing as a border between north of Ireland, there ever existed a border. So, you know, it's one of those issues. And my big issue on this one is, you know, this phrase that has come to the fore in this morning's papers, that Ireland will be, that has to have, this is from the Irish Front, it is going to be called a functioning all-Ireland economy. That means no border. We are at an issue where we have the DUP telling the British government we cannot have that, and then we have the Irish government saying, well, you're going to have that. So we are in I would think, a crisis over Ireland. Professor
Curran?
Yeah, I mean, there was a good photograph, well, there's a good piece in the Journal today, 58 reasons why Brexit is a bad idea, that we have 58 border crossings between Donegal and the north, and exactly that. It's you know, if a year and a half ago someone had told us that maybe in 3 years' time there'll be a border just like we had, you know, we would have thought, are you crazy? You know, but all of a sudden we are left with this, which is maybe, nightmare for some people, because it really, we remember the queues at the border. We remember, of course, it was more tense. You could cut the knife back then. I remember those days where coming to Coshquin or whatever else, you really could feel it in the air. You know, you could feel the freedom actually when you're coming out of the north. It was so dark back then. But this is no less a disaster for anyone, and for the thousands of people here in Derry-Donegal who are crossing the border every day, and all of us going through it for many reasons. So it is really difficult to see, because we don't even know how the UK is going to negotiate the exit. We don't know, you know.
Do they know?
I don't think so, because we've never been there before. You know, we don't know what the payment is. We don't know. There's so many variables. But
see, the payment is probably the easiest type of thing to, because they're at 20, we're at 60.
Yeah.
Let's meet at 35, 40, whatever. But that doesn't really address the immediate and long-term consequences of this.
Yeah,
it is going to happen though, Mary, isn't it?
Well, I mean, unless there's the whole of the British government collapses and Labour go in to power, and I mean, Jeremy Corbyn isn't exactly a great supporter of the European Union.
But politicians have been known to change their minds.
Well, yes, once they go into to the power and the civil servants get their hands on them. But they certainly, I mean, there is, and I've heard this discussed this week, there is nothing wrong with holding a second referendum. I mean, we were laughed at in Ireland for having a second referendum, but actually it is written down, as it has happened in France. If there's a narrow majority, 2% or whatever, then you rerun it.
That's a mistake. The mistakes. Yeah, the mistakes.
To have a clear view of
that
what
should
it
have
is,
been in situ in the first place. Like, you know, a margin. But anyway, look, that's where we have to leave it. We're going to have to exit ourselves, I suppose. Thank you both of you so very much for coming in. Really interesting comments. Great to get your views. It's appreciated.
Thank you.
That's Mary Hart and also Professor Kevin Curran. Thank you very much as well.
You're welcome, Greg.
We'll be back after the news and obituary notices. Stay tuned. Actually, to take us out of this section, we can hear Boris Johnson actually on his views this morning at a presser as it relates to his views on a border between North and South. And we'll be back after the news in a bit.
This matters hugely to our people on both sides of the border. It's vital that we get it right. And I'm sure that we can get it right. And one thing I can tell you is that the British government has absolutely no interest whatever in seeing any kind of hard border. That is the last thing we want to see as a result of this exercise.
Today's 9 till noon show comes to you in association with City of Derry Airport. Pre-book your airport parking online from only £2 per day. After the first day,